Greit, da flytter vi oss over til den siste delen, den store diskusjonsdelen, og da, Diana, da gir jeg ordet til deg og Jim. Vær så god.
Diana Sprakan-Lindblom, Universitetet i Oslo. Og så tenkte vi at vi skulle starte med en kort mentimeter, som kommer alldeles straks. Og så tror jeg sen vi kommer gå over til samtale, så kanskje Leonora kan komme og sitte deg her, om du vil. Og Patrick.
Vil du ha spørsmål på meg?
Ja, det tror jeg. Jeg kan presentere her, kanskje.
Leonora Bergsjø. Ja da. Leonora Bergsjø fra Høgskolen i Østfold, med i ENACT Projectet og forsker på digital etikk.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Mkallev. I work as a professor at NTNU, Department of Computer Science. And I work on responsible AI and as an extension on ethical AI, so part of the project ENACT 2.
Yes.
Yeah. And I am Jim Thoresen. I'm leading a group in robotics and AI at the university here in Oslo, at the Department of Mathematics, and I'm a colleague of Diana here. So, yeah, the notes on the screen. So, please bring up your smartphone. If you have a smartphone, and take a picture, or scan the QR code, and the Mentimeter questioning will open on your phone. So I'll switch over to it. Yes, so good responses. 16. So are there more responses? So this first is just kind of getting to know who we are here today. So let's see, who are we? For the majority of those that have a domain is at the university and public sector and others. So maybe. But with some of you others, say where you kind of belong to. You don't have to.
I'm kind of guessing that others could be the institute sector.
Sorry?
I'm guessing that others are, at least one of the others are institute sector.
Yeah.
Yes, also some of the remaining four.
Yeah, true. I mean, maybe you could have had research institute like SINTEF also here. Okay, but that's good. Okay, we do the next one. Okay, I can say it in English. How competent do you regard yourself within ethical use of AI? So all from beginner to expert. Don't be shy. Yeah, I think we can unhide. See. Okay, yeah, I should not do all the talking here, so I'll leave it up to if others would like to comment, and then we have the panelists here. And would you like to?
Yes, it's an interesting question because people are usually quite shy. So I know that many of you, more than two, are experts. So I think it's, but this is, the more we know, the more humble we are, right?
Yes, and it's interesting also to see, like, what do we mean by literacy, and do we talk about here about a formal type of learning or course, or do we talk about like just learning on our own? So does our organization provide this kind of
Maybe you would like to take it a little bit closer to your mouth.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's very subjective for now, like whether you are an expert or not.
Yeah, I just want to add that if I was going to answer this, and I haven't answered it, I'll probably be to the left side of things, simply because it's very difficult to keep up with all the developments that are happening in the AI field. Like every week there seems to be something new, and that kind of influences our perspective on what is ethical and how we should treat that from this kind of ethical lens. So I think that we're obviously always learning, but developments are keeping us always active, and it's really difficult to keep up with these things, and things change so fast, and our conceptions of what is ethical, how do we ethically use these things, what are maybe misuses, are continuously growing and changing. So it's a really dynamic and evolving domain.
Yeah, and that brings me to one of the questions, like whether you, as representatives and project partners and so on, what is your experience with this kind of tools like ChatGPT and Copilot, and what's your experience as an employee part of an organization, an academic organization, in this sense, and whether any courses, or are you using it, in which ways, and so on. So just to see the academic part of it.
Yeah, I can start. There isn't very much on the training part about ethical use. There's some very general guidelines, and these constantly change. But I think the main point about it is that when you think about ethical and, as a consequence, unethical use of AI, it's not always that somebody makes a conscious choice of doing something unethical. A lot of the times our choices are maybe misguided, or we didn't think, or we didn't pay attention to things, and that kind of has a larger implication. We saw this in the case, for example, in Tromsø municipality, where we could say that that was kind of like maybe AI not used in the appropriate way, in a good way. And these things, I wouldn't call them maybe unethical, but I would say that we are faced with new technologies, new affordances of what they can do, and sometimes we're not really well prepared to deal with these. I don't think it's always a matter of ethics per se, but a matter of understanding what are the design, how they work, what are the consequences, and how we should treat them.
Yes, adding to that, I think we are in at least in my field, it's difficult to talk about how we use AI because there are so strong opinions, and I know colleagues find it difficult to be transparent about the use. Because many think they shouldn't be used at all, and others are very optimistic and use it all the time. So there is a really polarity here. And in Østfold, we're working to have some systematic training, both for the students and the teachers. And we see that there are the same people signing up, right? Those who are already using it.
And then does it mean that we have an ethical dilemma about using it and staying competitive, also as researchers, and maybe choosing to do not use it? And that leads me to the next question. What do you think? What are your thoughts around whether we as employees in an organization, whether it's academic or an industry partner type of organization, can we choose, can we refuse to do not use it or to use it? Do we have a choice, like being part of these organizations? Like what is your thought around it?
Yeah, I can start with that. We're told the narrative all the time that this is happening, you have to get on the train, and those who are telling us these stories, they're gaining a lot of money. So I think it is extremely important to discuss this. What are we obliged to use, and what can we choose to use, and what should we choose not to use? This is not a story written in stone. This is something that we are co-creating right now. So I think we should really be careful to repeat these lines from the commercials that this is happening and everyone have to use them.
Yeah, I don't know what the experience of everybody in the room here is, but I think that we are kind of becoming users without our maybe our permission, but for example, in our organization, we one day we wake up and we see Copilot integrated in everything. So we are kind of using it in a way, and if we're not using it actively, it's kind of used in the background by somebody else. So the question is, do we have any agency or control about if these tools can be used and if they should be used? As employees, I think we have very little control, very little understanding. Yeah, it's not easy to draw the line of where our kind of like our resistance can be, and if there is any, as a matter of fact, especially if these tools are helping you do your work and you find them very useful and your productivity goes up, then it's very difficult to be the black sheep and try to resist.
And I think, especially if you use it for like generating some report, or whether you're a student and you use it for your thesis, or whether you are in an organization up in Tromsø, like making a report, it's definitely a little more visible if you do mistakes or do some bad use of these AI tools. Like when you use the output part of it, it's less kind of easy to see the backside if you're on the input side, like what AI tools are you using, but how are they handling the data, and the data you are putting into the prompts or providing to the language model, is that going to be used to train future models, and privacy and all these issues it will take a longer time until mistakes are kind of seen. So that's also to keep in mind here the ethical challenge are kind of like really wide, and there are many things to take into account. But I think it's important to not be afraid of not using it. But be cautious. Yes.
I'd like to add something here. It's not directly ethical AI use, but we did, SINTEF just published a report about AI use in general among academics, people with higher degrees. And I say roughly 50% of the persons did use it. And we're not talking about organizations, we are talking about people. But another interesting thing from an ethical and from all other perspectives is that they didn't trust it. So they used it, but they didn't trust it. They had to sort of be very careful with it. So we are aware that it's here, but we are definitely lacking, how shall I say it, a manual on how to use it. And that, I think we have to develop it together, this manual. It will take some time, but AI is, after all, the same as any technology since the axe or before the axe. It can be used for dual purposes. You can use an axe for very useful thing and not so kind things. And AI will have the same challenge. We have to work on learn how to use it, both the ethical side and also the other sides of AI. But I don't think we can avoid it. That's the only thing I'm sure of at the moment.
I should also mention that if you have any questions or you want to interact and so on, please feel free to raise your hand and ask away. And that brings us that actually it was raised up today about what do we talk about in the ENACT project, responsible AI, because there is this language is always like especially important when we work across sectors and so on. What do we mean by responsible AI or responsible AI literacy versus ethical AI literacy, and what is your view on that?
Yes, I really like your question, and it's so important because there are so many workshops and so many discussions on ethics that is really about lawfulness. It's about should we follow the rules and how do we do that? And that's not what we're aiming at in the ENACT methodology. we take it for granted that we do follow the laws, and then we discuss the room of opportunity that we do have within the laws and regulations, and see, is it ethical to use it? So I usually divide between responsible, which is lawful, ethical, and secure, and then the ethical, which is the room in between that we are exploring through this methodology. So thank you for asking this question. It's so important to be aware that we usually end up speaking about laws and not ethics.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe you can
Okay.
take.
Please bring up your phone again, and then let's see if we can get this.
There was a comment from
Sorry.
Per. From Per.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is it working? Yeah, it's working. So my comment or question is related to how we sort of perceive or how we talk about the scope of ethics in terms of using this technology for different use cases. So referring to the MIT study that shows that part of the brain is activated less when you use these technologies, LLM particularly. If you use them extensively, the brain activity is less activated, right? And so there is a kind of paradigm or paradox here that these technologies that actually need more reflexivity in our users are perhaps making us less reflexive. So I would just like to sort of come to the floor with the question that perhaps it should be within the scope of AI ethics that when we use technology in our organizations, institutions, private life, etc., should we also then try to address that, okay, you might use it in that way, but you need to sort of address your, what you call it, depth, reflexive depth, in a sense, within your organization. Sort of open question to the panel. Thank you.
And how do you do that? Well, yes.
No, I think it's an excellent question. And one point I think that it's important is when we started this project, there weren't so many, at least when it started, it was like the introduction of generative AI tools. So when we were thinking about ethics, we weren't really considering these kind of questions. So one of the case in points is that the method that we showed, I think is really good because it's flexible and adaptable to any kind of new development that we see technologically, and also these kind of discussions about what it means in terms of reflexivity fall within what is kind of usually the context of discussion of things that are included. About your question, definitely I think that's an ethical question. On the one hand, organizations are there to provide some service to the general public. At the same time, they're there to serve their own employees. So you need to fulfill kind of like some basic needs of people when they're working, and the thing of self-fulfillment, of being productive, of learning, of socializing, of contributing to society. And obviously, if you're dumbed down to basically a person that's non-reflexive, and you're using these tools as kind of like a medium between the digital and the physical, then your role is not really one that satisfies you. So it's an ethical question, how do we deal with that? And I think that now we're starting to come to terms with the fact that a lot of these tools are leading to this. People are just basically being prompt engineers or prompt enters. Is that really a job or a task in any kind of field, whether that's software engineering, customer service management, that is fulfilling? Is it ethical to have humans there? And how should we deal with this kind of questions? So, great question. I don't have a good answer to it at the moment, but it's definitely within the sphere of an ethical discussion of AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to also follow up. Yeah, I think it's a good question. The big difference now between the positive the digitalization is to a large extent this unreliability. Often, or at least in the beginning, large language models were kind of compared to an advanced calculator. that we got. I've been living that long. I experienced when you could buy a calculator and when you didn't have to multiply and divide numbers and so on, and it always gave you correct results. So you quickly trusted it, and yeah, I think nobody doing calculations today are kind of sitting down and doing calculations by hand just to check that the computer is doing it correctly. But that's a big challenge now in this rapidly developing large language models. That it's hard to know what is properly responded and what is this in the call it hallucination, that it's similar to in some cultures that it's better giving some answer that is wrong rather than not responding at all, and there's still some kind of improvement there in the model to have the model be able to express more kind of uncertainty rather than just giving an answer that is wrong. So until we have that, it's definitely important to also learn how to find and how to verify the results. But over time, there will be kind of some I think with all like machines and AI systems that you will gradually kind of see what is trustworthy and what you should not trust. And the experience with these models are too short to trust them, especially if it's a kind of if the reply is important for decision making and so on. You should be in general skeptical to what comes out of a large language model. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking about asking you another question, and then maybe we can go to the next Mentimeter. About the ENACT methodology. Like, what do you see from your perspective? Maybe 3 top strengths, and what should we revise in it? Like, what does it work well that other people, even those that haven't participated in the project or are not part of this, haven't done this methodology, what does it work well in ENACT as you see it?
Well, I can add something that wasn't discussed perhaps earlier today, and that is that it can be used throughout the whole life circle of the development and use of a new technology. So at any point you can do the method, and I think this is a real strength. For example, when we started, like you mentioned, we didn't have ChatGPT at all. And being able to use the methodology on different levels, I think that's a very important strength. And it can be used both if you have a development team doing the development yourself or buying a product. So that's a big strength.
I think another strength is the fact that it's kind of like that it's not really fixed on certain values or certain topics, that it allows for the discussion of things that are very contemporary and relevant. Like, for example, at one of the workshops, I believe we were talking about intellectual property rights and how generative AI technologies might be using content that is IP infringed somehow. So this isn't really something that we had built into the method. It would be impossible to know this when we started the project, but it's something that kind of emerges as a natural topic because it allows for the inclusion of these topics. A lot about the strengths. And I want to talk about one of the weaknesses too.
Yes, please.
And I think that this is, I also want to open the floor to those who participated in the pilots. But one of the weaknesses I feel is that this is something that takes a lot of time. We did a series of workshops and they just scratched the surface. So my question is, how do we develop a method, or how do we adapt a method so it's more aligned with everyday workday practices? Because I understand that it's not possible to allocate 3 full working days just to talk about AI and ethics. So the question is, 1, do we need a specialized group that works on this? Or 2, do we need to adapt the method in a way that is more flexible and more adaptable to everyday work life? And I welcome any comments if you have any.
I do have a comment. Okay. I think the strength that we had in the pilot session is that you get access, or you give a chance to employees who just doing the tasks actually reflect how these tasks impact society or impact the end user. Because a lot of engineers just come to work and they have this bunch of things they have to fix. They don't even sometimes know, I have a lot of many friends who are engineers, and they're I don't care where it's gonna. I'm just doing my job. So I think the strengths, gathering this kind of cross-project group within the organization, is allowing everyone to actually reflect and think, okay, but what I'm as an employee, as an engineer, what am I doing with this? Yeah, I think that's also a very big strength that I think I wanted to mention, to give people time to reflect how their work impacts other people. Yes.
Do we have any opinions from the industry partners? What are the strengths, and maybe what are your wishes? How should we change the method, the methodology, so it fits you better? Maybe where do we need to do the work?
I think you've discussed the strengths and covered them very well. I think I agree with all that's been said, and I think you also now touched on I think what I find to be the most challenging part, and that's something as simple and also so complicated as the time aspect. You need time to dive into these issues. There's no way around that. At the same time, it is really hard to get a group of people together, set aside a full day for this, especially if it's not even it's not even ticking off a formal compliance. So I think that's the challenge. Now, how do you solve that? I don't know. I don't have any good, because I think you need, and like I said earlier, I think really you need the time to dive into you need to allow the room to dive into the issues, and that requires time. And if you look at all the different modules in the process as well, it's hard for me to say, look, you could definitely shave off, 10 minutes here. It's so hard. You need, it is very stringent already. There isn't that much leverage, so I'm not really sure how to do that. But you're really smart people, so I think you'll figure it out.
Well, we have seen that before GDPR was in place, people weren't allocated so much time, if not needed, to privacy and so on. But since it became a law, then we have seen teams trying to allocate them. So maybe the law is always something that you come down to, and if it's regulated by law, then you must prioritize to have dedicated time for that. So hopefully it will develop something in that sense as well.
Yes, I wanted to add another challenge, and it was briefly mentioned today. And we have in the methodology that it should be free, available to everyone. And that means that businesses themselves have to facilitate. And this is a challenge. Because in the CORAS methodology, which we have used to develop this methodology, you have professional facilitators coming in, doing a workshop, of course being paid, and this is a professional approach. But we're trying to make something that will be available for everyone, and that is a difficult concept. And like Rabindra was mentioning, maybe NAV has the capability to have professional facilitators, but in my dream, also small businesses can use the methodology, but it is difficult to facilitate such a discussion if you're not an ethicist or a facilitator. So that's a challenge that we're trying to solve.
Okay, have a look on the screen and bring up your smartphone. Ethical question, is it okay to use AI language models in your work? Like whatever model you are offered or being relevant? We are on 15th or 19th, so 4 more, but at least 1 more, and I will unhide. Yes, okay, let's see. Wow, yeah, this is positive for the use of AI tools. What do you think?
I was hoping for the alternative, it depends. But the thought is how.
So so this is for the majority here are on the high use end. Does that surprise you?
Well, everyone here have chosen to come here. You know, those who are never using it might not be here today. So I think we have a very biased group. And this is also a challenge when we are discussing ethical issues, that we have this division and certain people signing up for the courses and discussions. I would really like to include all the voices in all the discussions, and this is also a challenge.
You have
So,
more. Sorry, just go
yeah,
ahead.
you know, so it seems to me that you when you who are here are kind of have good insights, so you are kind of confident about both the strengths and the weaknesses. Any comments from the audience here to what you responded? We put this together rather quickly, so I understand some options are probably then missing here.
Maybe I can comment on this, then there's no response. So coming from the academic perspective, it's usually considered that it's not okay to use these large language models. So when it comes to like universities, what we typically would use them for are writing papers, and that's very bad. We shouldn't do that. At least writing text, that's something that's explicitly not allowed for many of our journals now and many of the conferences. You need to have a declaration that you haven't used generative AI for writing the text. It's also not really considered the best practice for data analysis, simply because there's a lot of errors, a lot of omissions. When it comes to reviewing papers, it's also not considered to be okay. When it comes to writing project proposals, it's not considered to be okay. So there's very little room where you can say that it's okay. Students are also discouraged from using it. We explicitly ask them not to. We cannot grade using generative AI. We cannot teach using generative AI. So it's a very limited scope of tasks that we can actually do in the academic field that are considered okay. That doesn't mean people do not do them. That's a different story. But if it's okay or not, if it's accepted, I would say that probably not.
Yeah, if I may then balance it a little bit, so at our university here in Oslo, there has been a shift, I think. And I think it has helped that the university has kind of tried to draft some guidelines about documenting the use of AI. So in a way, there's an increasing encouragement of using AI for the good. But the more you use it, the more you should document it. But so we tend to kind of encourage it. But of course, it's similar to currently self-driving cars. It is the human driver that is still in charge. So you can't kind of excuse that you use a large language model. But I see the challenge that we receive applications and you don't know whether this is. It looks very kind of convincing, but at the same time it has this kind of like bullet list typical large language model style, and you get skeptical. And I talked to an editor of a scientific journal some time ago, and she was very kind of frustrated because now they get a lot of papers, and hard to know whether this is actually written by humans. Or a large language model, and at the same time, it's fairly strict now that you cannot use. These tools to actually check whether it is human work or artificially generated. So in academia, it's still a long way to go to be able to respond in this to a lot of tasks. It's still in this brown-orange category there, I think, unfortunately. Yes.
Do you have more questions?
Yes, I think we have a last one. Yeah, right. Okay. Now it's up to you to to explain your previous answer. How come that you responded what you did on the previous question?
I think at least at the European level, there are currently coming guidelines around the use. And in my understanding, you can use it, or you can use this kind of tools, but you need to kind of declare the use of it. But I have also seen now currently in many papers, like kind of the language that they use, it's similar, that you don't see the nuances that we humans with different types of backgrounds and using English as non-native speakers, that in a way the language is becoming more unified. Also when reading papers. And yeah, it's at what cost, even if we use it individually or as organization. I think it's a question of what cost do we pay for it. And it can be in terms of language, how our language will change over time. What kind of task we delegate to these tools. And whether we will lose some skills over time, if this is, not within 1 year or so, but over the years, what skills do we use and what skills do we use within our sector, like academia and so on?
Yes, these are very important questions, and I think this is the unifying of the language is very important. And if you ask AI to generate a podcast, you'll hear the white voice, which is a very stereotypical way of presenting things. Typical American approach, white voice. And I think it's a good picture of what we're seeing in the texts. But it's easier to hear it when you hear the voice. But we're really generating white voice texts. And what does that do to diversity? I think that this is a really ethical challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay, we will show the responses now. This is a full screen here. So we have a lot of food for comments.
Ja. Vi begynte å snakke engelsk her, men det er bare lov å stille spørsmål og kommentarer på norsk også. Det blir jeg minnet om nå.
I have to scroll down actually.
Yeah, someone brings in the sustainability aspect in here, which we haven't discussed at all today. I don't know whether you have any kind of perspectives on the use of energy and what about climate change and how do we carbon print and so on.
Yes, that's increasing attention on the use. I think it's like we see the companies also kind of understanding that. We probably have heard about this investment now in the north of Norway, in Narvik. Where there are probably hydropower electricity, and so they can sell them as running on renewable energy. Okay.
Yes, I'm curious about that because this is a big discussion. Can we, when we're talking about work, can we think about sustainability, or how do we handle that challenge? Because I know that many think that their work is so important and they really have to do it, or due to the effectiveness of using it, it's worth it, right?
It feels
At
like
what cost?
Yeah, it feels that we just jumped on the train and we are doing because everyone is doing it, but what are the consequences in the long term? And I don't know whether we have anyone like here having this perspective on sustainability. But yeah, it's important, and it's always, we choose always things, and we choose to use it or not using, and we always think that, which shouldn't be the case, that okay, someone else's problems, but what about the future generations or our children that will have to deal with the consequences of our choices?
Yes, and going back to the methodology, the ENACT methodology, this is something that we use as a challenge for the businesses. If they have sustainability as a value, what does it mean in practice? What does that look like when they do the choices that they do? And how can you show that you mean it?
One interesting point that came out during workshops during the autumn and so on, it was that many of our project partners named trust as one of the core value, since the values is one of the core principles or core aspects of the ENACT methodology. And as it emerged, this value, we also started thinking about whether this is something specific because it's Norwegian organizations, and that's why we got trust as a core value, or would we get the same results if we were to conduct in other countries? So values are not only like specific, there are some values that are specific to the organization in itself, but there are also some values that we have as a country and so on. So do we have, if we were to apply this ENACT methodology in other places, I wonder how would this end up, what findings we would have in that sense, and how should we adapt? Because Norway is also a digitalized country. We can use this methodology both digitally and in an analog format or physical meeting in a room, but not everyone is on that boat. And in that sense, like how to, if we should transfer this knowledge of ethical AI literacy, how should we transfer the knowledge that we build up, the competence that we build up here, maybe to other countries or to global south, or that maybe countries that are not so digitalized? And I'm not sure we have anyone in the room like covering those aspects, but yeah, that's something else. I don't know, do you want to comment?
Good question. I don't know if the discussions will be the same. That's the key question, because from the presentation that we saw before from Natalia, you showed that a lot of the ethical kind of frameworks are concentrated on a very small number of countries. So the question is like, why aren't the other countries represented? And if so, what are the discussions and what are the kind of like ethical lenses that they will include in their discussions? For example, thinking towards the east, I guess there's a lot of discussion about community, and this is something that we don't really talk about very much in our ethical discussions. So I don't know if we can transfer something in terms of like lessons learned from our ethical discussions, because they might not be applicable. Maybe the method itself is good enough, or maybe it's not. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess that there are ethical things to be discussed, but I don't know how applicable the ones that we talk about here are there. I guess there's some overlap, obviously, but I would say that there's a lot of new themes that we haven't even considered at all. So it would be very interesting, like experiment to do that, perhaps, if we could manage in the future.
Maybe in a future project.
Yeah.
And we can ask also the audience about that question, because we have a last slide here now. If we get, so if you look on your phone.
But I think there was a comment from Per before we go.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll try to link my question to where the discourse has gone in terms of talking about sustainability and AI. It's very complex, because the premise might be very different on determining on the way you view it. Because, for example, if you use Google search, you might search 10 times and you might get a good answer from an LLM with the first try. That's one thing. And also, you could state that, for example, using this technology now gives us data to improve the efficiency of the energy on the models. So there is a lot of talk now that sort of we've reached the kind of peak in terms of how good the language and the answers could be. This is just a theory, but that the main improvements now will be on the efficiency. But in terms of the sustainability aspect, this is also an aspect that's being discussed when it comes to different regions of the world already. When we talk about sustainability and, for example, should we limit ourselves in using these technologies, and should, for example, India or China limit themselves at all when the West have shown little will and effort to limit themselves before? Why should not they be? So there's really a complex aspect when we talk about sustainability and AI, and personally I think it's very difficult to put it into the individual context of as a citizen, and also in an organizational citizen or organizational context. So I think this is something that would be very interesting to follow in years to come. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to say something about? Or yeah.
Yeah. So you have a.
It's not shown on the.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It happens. It's kind of disconnecting, but you have it on your smartphone. If you look, if you haven't responded and submitted some text, you can please do so now, and it'll show up also like eventually also on the screen here. Yes, it's hidden until we decide to unhide it. So I think this is what we discussed now beforehand also, but it's interesting to also hear what your personal opinion about what risks, ethical risk, do you regard as the most challenging one in your workplace? So let's see, because we are not. I think we are going to round off in too many minutes. So let's unhide here and see what pops up. It's all different keywords, which is understandable. So there's not one or two that stands out like very visible. So that tells me that there's a lot of diversity here in the responses. So personvern or bias. So yeah, I think this is a kind of good roundup of this panel debate. There are many topics to think about here.
Yes, I can see many of those words that we named today about the language laws, about the trust and discrimination and privacy and enforced overproductivity. That's maybe something that we haven't discussed, but it's interesting. You want to say something?
Yes, and you also see the legal issues coming in again, because it's so difficult. But we're trying to be concrete.
Yes.
It's difficult to say that life is changing. It's easier to say privacy.
Yeah.
So I think we tend to not see the most important issues, the most difficult, like what is it doing to knowledge that we're now asking ChatGPT.
Yes.
Yes, so I think
big questions.
Yes, the big questions. Difficult to grasp. It's so much easier to think about data security.
Yes, that's true. And I wish, before we end this discussion, I wish to connect the discussion that we had on sustainability, and now given the words that the keywords that we had as answers, I want to bring in a new big question, and that's related to democracy. I wonder a little bit like how will the use of such tools impact our democracies? Because if we look at those countries that also Natalia has shown, there are often we talk about well-developed countries, and we are ahead of other countries with regard to AI literacy, use of AI because of the digitalization and so on. At the same time, I wonder whether this will be in the future an advantage, a competitive advantage for the countries, for the organizations, for our organization and so on, or whether, or what will be the cost. So I don't make it black and white, but what will be the cost of our democracies, considering that we use these tools that are owned, virtually owned in other countries, on other continents, and so on. So both on an individual level, because we always think that, okay, we can trust the state takes care of us, but at the same time, our organizations that are part, whether they are public or they are private organizations, they start using these tools. We don't always maybe have control about what is the input, what people put in there. So how will this be in the future? What will be the impact? What is the relationship to democracy? And here I want to give a concrete example related to Facebook, that for instance back in 2008, 2009 at the time, many people signed up to Facebook and we didn't know, we weren't aware really. Not many people have read the terms of use and so on, so we just sign up. And then years after, through scandals and so on, we have found out that our data, we knew that our data is used and so on, and we knew also about Google that it's used our data, but we were willing to give away this data, right? And we are in a similar situation now, perhaps. And how, I don't know, if you can, it's always hard to predict the future, but if we think about some ethical dilemmas and potential risk, for us being part of different organizations and being even part of well-developed countries, will we be at disadvantage at some point, whereas maybe countries from the global south, maybe that are not so well developed and maybe not as digitalized as us and having access to these tools and so on, at least maybe not as premium users or, part as organization and so on, will they be the ones that are safe in a way? So it was it was questions and reflection at the same time, but this link, if you can comment on this link on democracy and use of these AI tools in well-developed country versus not so, or less developed countries. Any thoughts? And there is no right and wrong, because we don't know, we cannot predict the future.
Yes, I want to comment on one thing, and that is related to democracy. It builds on a few prerequisites. And one of them is the critical thought. We have to be able to think critically if we are to make a decision and participate. And in order to do that, we need knowledge. We need what we call the Bildung or cultural formation. We need to learn many different things. And we need dialogue, not just a monologue. So, there are quite a few building blocks that we need. And at the very foundation, we usually talk about human value or human dignity as a core value that builds on, that is the building block for the whole democratic system. And the question would be then, is AI, the way we're using it, supporting that value? Is it supporting all the building blocks? Is it supporting critical thought? Is it supporting Bildung, cultural formation, or is it not? Are we able to use it in a way that it supports these core values or not? Because if we're not, then we won't have the democratic development that we're thinking that we want. So we're coming back to the values again. And the core question, are we using AI to support these values or not? So it's not a question about south or east, but
Yes.
about these core values, I would say.
Yes, and we also have, in Europe, we have these human values at the core of Europe, but it's not always the case, even if there are other countries well developed, but maybe not necessarily have these core values, but maybe they have community as a core value of their society, even if they are democratic societies. Did you want to comment?
Two thoughts on what you said, because I feel that you talk about democracy on two levels here. One, you talk about it in the kind of like the nation level and how these tools can be used as a weapon, maybe coercing one country or the other. This is something we're seeing right now. We're seeing countries using AI as a strategic weapon in the kind of global geopolitical race. So that's definitely one case. And the more it's kind of like embedded in what we do on the core part of our activities, the easier it is to kind of like coerce us as a society, as a country, as a nation, or as kind of like a region of Europe, for example. So that's definitely one thing that we see. The second point where you talked about democracies on the individual level, and there's obviously a lot of like soft power put into this. So we know how, for example, like Hollywood, kind of like a soft influence of the West, and especially the US, on how we perceive things, how we see things. And I think that we're seeing the same thing when it comes to AI. Like a lot of the things that it's trained on are based on a very small subset of the world. Like it's not trained on anything based in China, in Russia, in India, in the global south. So I wouldn't say it's misinformation, but it's incomplete or a subset of information. And this kind of then propagates and replicates, and people build on that. They build on the thought process, they build on the information, they build on the thinking process. So I would say that it is, in a way, a very much more subtle way of kind of not undermining democracy, but influencing us in a way. Like you talked about the case of Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. So I think that there is something similar happening in this case. So maybe not so evident, but I would say that it's something that it does definitely affect us. Yeah.
So to balance it out, I agree with what is been said by you. But on the other hand, I think there are also positive sides of this technology here. The most important for us that have lived for some time is the cost. Of course, I mean, you have to give away things, but however, you get these tools more or less for free if you don't consent to give away the data. So in that sense, it's a kind of it's a low threshold for anyone in the whole world, whether wealthy or not wealthy, to take them in use. So in that sense, it's positive. And also, I mean, second, the consumer or user power. There is not a single one developer. There is a competition going on here, and it's as we become gradually aware of the strengths and weaknesses of the different ones, it will be those language models that are kind of listening to the users that will be kind of winner of this continuous competition in developing these future tools, I think so. But of course, there are many challenges, especially in how these tools are then used and also misused for impacting so political opinions. Like now we have the election coming up here, and hopefully there's not too many kind of AI agents out there, but there are for sure some that can impact us in bad ways. So.
Yes, we will have to end, but before that, I wonder if anyone wants to share maybe some thoughts, that lessons learned from today, today's event, if there is anything that you will take away with you, anything new that you have kind of reflected upon or want to take with you further. Yes?
Yeah, thanks for a nice and thought-inspiring session. This was good. I've been working in research projects on trustworthy AI and also been reading Hagendorf, and I'm thinking that it corresponds well to many of the thoughts coming out of there. So what I've learned or started thinking about these 2 hours is this sort of challenge of bringing together this kind of virtue building approach to ethics, to the sort of checklist or compliance approach to ethics. It seems like you have been aiming to do both. And my question, which I'm not really expecting an answer to, is that at all possible? Or is the virtue building part of ethics, is that part of education, something that you need to do in order to do your work, or as part of a sort of reflecting and learning practitioner, whereas the compliance or the checklist approach to ethics is something else, and perhaps the educational aspect belongs in a university or a training session or in education. I don't know, but bringing those 2 worlds together, it's really great that you have been aiming to do that, and that's something to think about further, I guess.
I think that will give me an opportunity to say something that I've learned and that is actually an answer to what you are asking for. Robindra said it very clearly. We need to use time. So it's, in a way, doesn't matter where it is in the educational system, in the work life, it's home, private. We have to use some time on these issues. And the only way to learn something about it is to use some time. Like we have now spent some time together, learned something. We will do more of that in the research project, and we will do other more efforts like this to convey what we have learned. But in the end, to do these things, you have to spend some time on it. But our time now is up. Thank you very much for the time. It's 5 o'clock, and we should respect the time of the house here and the wonderful place to have a session like this. Thank you all.
Thank you.